The crash. In a busy city on Earth, the sun was shining bright. Cars zoomed by, and people hurried to their jobs. Among the crowd, no one noticed the dark shape moving across the sky. It was a spaceship, and it was in trouble. Inside the ship, Princess Lyra from the planet Scifistory felt a wave of panic wash over her. Her ship was damaged, and alarms were blaring all around her. "Hold on, Lyra. You can do this," she told herself. Her heart raced as she fought to control the ship. She had to escape from the enemy forces chasing her. They wanted her to capture her because she was the last of her royal family. She pressed buttons and pulled levers, trying to stabilize the ship, but it was no use. The controls were failing. "Mayday! Mayday!" she shouted into the communicator, but no one could hear her. Suddenly, the ship shook violently, and Lyra felt a jolt. She realized she was losing altitude fast. The spaceship began to spiral downward, and she could see the Earth below her. The tall buildings and bright lights grew closer and closer. With one last effort, she pulled back on the controls, trying to level the ship. It was too late. The ship crashed into a large field just outside a military base. The impact was huge. Metal crumpled, and smoke filled the air. Lyra groaned, dazed but alive. The chase. The forest was thick and dark as Lyra and Jake ran deeper into the trees. Sunlight barely pierced through the leaves above, creating a cool and shadowy path. Lyra's heart raced, not just from running, but from the fear of being caught. She could still hear the shouts of the soldiers behind them, and the sound of vehicles growing closer. "Keep going," Jake urged, glancing back. His face was serious, and Lyra could see the determination in his eyes. They could not stop. They had to escape. The princess felt a mix of fear and excitement. She had never been chased like this before. "Where are we going?" Lyra asked, trying to keep up with Jake's long strides. "There's a small clearing ahead. It's easier to hide there. We can catch our breath and plan," Jake replied, pushing branches out of their way. He was strong and quick, and Lyra admired his bravery. As they reached the clearing, they quickly ducked behind a large tree. They listened carefully, trying to hear if the soldiers were following them. The sounds of the forest surrounded them, the rustling leaves, the chirping birds, and their own heavy breathing. "I hope they don't find us," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. She looked at Jake, her eyes wide with worry. "What if they catch us? I can't go back." "They won't catch us," Jake assured her, his tone steady. "We're faster and smarter. Just stay quiet, and we'll be fine." Minutes felt like hours as they waited in silence. Suddenly, they heard the roar of engines. A military truck rumbled past the edge of the clearing. Jake peeked out carefully, watching the soldiers search the area. "They're close," he said quietly, turning back to Lyra. "We need to move again." They slipped out of the clearing and into the trees, moving silently. Lyra could feel the adrenaline coursing through her. This was not the life of a princess. This was a wild adventure. She was scared but also thrilled. As they ran, Lyra spoke up. "What do you know about the soldiers? Why are they after me?" "They want to capture you," Jake explained as they dodged branches. "Your ship crashed near a military base. They might think you have valuable information or technology. They don't know who you really are." Lyra's mind raced. "I didn't mean to cause trouble. I just wanted to get away from my enemies." Jake nodded, understanding. "I know, but now we have to stick together. We can't trust anyone else." Suddenly, they heard shouting again, closer this time. The soldiers had picked up their trail. Lyra's heart sank as panic surged within her. "They found us." "Run," Jake shouted, grabbing her hand. They sprinted away from the noise, pushing through the underbrush. Lyra's legs felt heavy, but she knew they had to keep going. They ran up a small hill, the ground uneven beneath their feet. As they reached the top, Lyra turned to look back. She could see soldiers spilling into the forest. searching frantically for them. "They're coming," she cried out. Jake took a deep breath. "We have to find a place to hide." He spotted a narrow cave entrance nearby, partly hidden by vines. "Over there." Without hesitation, they rushed toward the cave. They squeezed inside, the cool air hitting their faces. Lyra pressed her back against the cold stone wall, her heart racing. They listened as the soldiers drew closer, their voices echoing in the forest. "This is it," Jake whispered. "If we stay quiet, they might pass us." Lyra nodded, holding her breath. The sound of boots crunched nearby, and she could hear the soldiers talking. Her heart pounded in her chest, and she prayed they wouldn't find them. In that dark cave, surrounded by uncertainty, Lyra and Jake realized how much depended on their escape. Their adventure was just beginning, but they were determined to face whatever challenges lay ahead, together. Safe haven. Inside the dark cave, Lyra and Jake held their breath as the soldiers moved closer. The sounds of footsteps echoed in the narrow space, making their hearts race. Lyra pressed against the cool stone wall, trying to remain as quiet as possible. She glanced at Jake, who looked tense but focused. "Stay still," he whispered, his voice calm. "They might go away." Lyra nodded, her heart pounding. She felt scared but also determined. She had never been in a situation like this before. All she could think about was her home on Zephyria and how much she wanted to return. After what felt like forever, the sounds outside began to fade. The soldiers had moved away, searching elsewhere for the mysterious princess. Lyra exhaled slowly, relief washing over her. "Do you think they'll find us?" she asked softly. "I don't think so," Jake replied. "We're hidden well here. But we can't stay in the cave for long. We need a safe place to rest and plan our next move." Lyra agreed. She felt exhausted after running and hiding for so long. "But where can we go?" Jake thought for a moment. "There's a small cabin nearby. It used to belong to a ranger. It's not far, and it's well hidden. We can stay there for a while." "Let's go then," Lyra said, feeling a burst of energy. She wanted to be somewhere safe, away from the soldiers. They carefully left the cave, keeping an eye and ear out for any signs of danger. The forest was still, the only sound being the rustle of leaves in the breeze. They moved quietly, stepping lightly on the soft ground. After a few minutes of walking, they reached the cabin. It was small and made of wood, blending in with the trees. "Here it is," Jake said, smiling slightly. "It looks abandoned, but it should be safe." Lyra felt a wave of relief wash over her as they stepped inside. The cabin was dusty but intact. Sunlight streamed through the small windows, illuminating the simple wooden furniture. There was a table, a few chairs, and a fireplace. It felt cozy and welcoming compared to the dark cave. "We can rest here," Jake said, closing the door behind them. "Let's clean up a bit and make sure there are no surprises." Lyra nodded, grateful for the shelter. She began to dust off the table while Jake checked the windows and doors. Once they were satisfied, they sat down together. "What now?" Lyra asked, leaning forward. "We can't stay here forever." Jake sighed, running a hand through his hair. "First, we need to come up with a plan to get you back home. We can't let the soldiers find you again. I think we need to contact someone who can help." "Like who?" Lyra asked, her brow furrowed in thought. "There are people who support your planet. I have some contacts in the resistance movement. They can help us." Lyra felt a mix of hope and fear. What if they don't believe us? What if they think I'm just a danger? "They'll believe you," Jake reassured her. "We just need to explain your situation. Besides, we have proof. Your ship crashed on Earth. That will make them listen." Feeling a little better, Lyra nodded. "You're right. We should try to reach out to them." Jake smiled, a glint of determination in his eyes. "Okay. First, let's eat something. I brought some snacks from my backpack." He pulled out a few energy bars and water bottles. They sat together on the floor, sharing food and talking about their homes. Lyra shared stories about Siferia's beautiful landscapes and vibrant culture. Jake listened with fascination, imagining a world far different from his own. As they finished their meal, Lyra felt a growing sense of hope. Here they were, two unlikely allies, working together to face the challenges ahead. They might be far from safety, but they had each other. And that was a start. With the sun setting outside, they knew they had to prepare for the next steps in their journey. Together, they would find a way to fight against the dangers that lay ahead and reclaim her rightful place on Sifiria. Training together. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the windows of the cabin, waking Lyra and Jake. Lyra stretched and felt a rush of energy. They had a lot to do, and she was ready to start. After breakfast, Lyra looked at Jake. "What's our plan for today?" she asked, excitement in her voice. Jake smiled. "Today we train. If we're going to face your enemies, we need to be ready." "Train? But I'm not a warrior," Lyra replied, feeling unsure. Jake shook his head. "You are a princess, Lyra, but you can also be a fighter. I'll teach you some earth techniques, and you can teach me about your alien skills." Lyra nodded, feeling more confident. "Okay, let's do this." They went outside, finding a clear area in front of the cabin. The sun shone bright above them, and the air felt fresh and clean. Jake began by showing Lyra some basic moves. "First, let's practice how to stand and move. Balance is key," he explained. He demonstrated a simple fighting stance, feet shoulder-width apart, knees slightly bent. Lyra copied him, trying to feel the balance in her body. "Good. Now let's add some punches," Jake said, throwing a few quick jabs in the air. Lyra followed along, trying her best to mimic his movements. At first, her punches were weak and awkward, but Jake encouraged her. "You're doing great. Just focus on your target." After a while, Lyra began to improve. She felt her muscles warming up, and she enjoyed the challenge. "This is fun," she laughed, throwing a punch with more strength. Jake smiled, proud of her progress. "Now let's try some footwork. It's important to be quick on your feet." He showed her how to step side to side and forward and backward. As they practiced, Lyra began to feel more confident. She was learning quickly, and the training helped her focus. She felt the fear from yesterday fading away. "What's next?" she asked, eager to learn more. "Now let's work on some defensive moves," Jake said. He demonstrated how to block an incoming attack, using his arms to shield his face. "You need to protect yourself if someone tries to hit you." Lyra listened carefully and practiced the blocking technique. At first, she struggled to get it right, but Jake encouraged her. "You'll get it. Just keep trying." After several attempts, she finally managed to block a punch from Jake. "Yes, I did it," she exclaimed, a wide smile on her face. "Exactly. You're a natural," Jake said, beaming with pride. "Now let's put it all together. We can practice some light sparring." "Wait, what's sparring?" Lyra asked, her eyes widening. "It's like a practice fight. We'll take it easy, just to see how you can use what you've learned," Jake explained. Lyra felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. "Okay, I'll try." They squared off, Jake keeping his movements slow and controlled. Lyra took a deep breath and focused. They moved around each other, Lyra throwing punches and Jake blocking them. At first, Lyra felt overwhelmed, but she remembered Jake's advice and found her rhythm. She was surprised by how quickly she adapted. "You're doing great, Lyra. Just keep your guard up," Jake called out, cheering her on. They continued to spar for a while, both laughing and encouraging each other. Lyra felt powerful and alive. After their training session, they both collapsed on the grass, breathing heavily but smiling. "I can't believe I did that," Lyra said, feeling proud of herself. Jake grinned. "You really did. You're becoming a strong fighter, and we have to keep training. The more you learn, the better prepared you'll be." Lyra nodded, excited about the future. I'll keep practicing every day. I want to be ready for anything." As they lay there in the warm sun, they knew that together they could face whatever challenges came their way. Their bond was growing stronger, and they were ready for the next steps in their journey. The secret mission. As the morning sun rose over the forest, Lyra felt a surge of energy. Today was important. Jake and Sarah had planned a secret mission to gather more information about the soldiers chasing them. They needed to find out what the soldiers knew and how to protect Lyra. After breakfast, the trio gathered in the cabin. Jake laid out a map on the table. "Our mission is to sneak into the military base nearby," he explained. "We can gather intel on their plans and maybe find out why they want Lyra so badly." Lyra looked at the map, feeling both excited and nervous. "How do we get in without being seen?" she asked, biting her lip. "There's a gap in the fence on the east side," Sarah replied. "If we can get through there, we can scout the area and listen in on their conversations." Jake nodded in agreement. "We'll need to move quietly. If we're caught, we could be in big trouble. But if we succeed, it will give us the information we need." Lyra took a deep breath, feeling determined. "I'm ready. Let's do this." With their plan set, they packed their bags with supplies, water, energy bars, and a few small tools. They dressed in dark clothes to blend in with the shadows of the forest. Once they were ready, they set off towards the military base, hearts pounding with excitement and fear. As they approached the base, the tall chain-link fence loomed ahead. It was topped with barbed wire, making it look intimidating. Lyra's stomach churned, but she reminded herself of the mission. They needed to be brave. "We need to be quiet," Jake whispered as they reached the gap in the fence. They slipped through, and the inside of the base opened up before them. It was a busy place, with soldiers moving about and trucks driving in and out. Lyra felt her heart race as they hid behind a stack of crates, observing the soldiers. "What do we do now?" she asked, trying to keep her voice low. "Let's listen," Sarah suggested. "We need to find out what they're planning." They crouched behind the crates, straining to hear the conversations of the soldiers nearby. Lyra held her breath, feeling the tension in the air. After a few moments, she caught snippets of their talk. "We need to find that alien princess. She knows too much," one soldier said, his voice filled with anger. Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. "They really are after me," she whispered to Jake and Sarah. "Yes," Jake replied, his face serious. "But we can't let them know we're here. We need to stay hidden." As they listened, another soldier mentioned a plan to search the forest. "We'll sweep the area tomorrow," he said. "We can't let her get away again." Lyra's heart raced. They had to act fast. "We need to leave before they find us," she urged. Just as they prepared to move, a loud noise erupted from the other side of the base. A truck backfired, creating chaos as soldiers rushed to check on the commotion. Jake seized the moment. "Now, let's go." They darted away from the crates, moving quickly and quietly. Lyra felt adrenaline pumping through her veins as they made their way back towards the fence. As they reached the gap, Lyra glanced back. The soldiers were distracted, but she felt a sense of urgency. They squeezed through the fence and dashed into the safety of the trees. Once they were a safe distance away, they stopped to catch their breath. "We did it," Lyra exclaimed, a mixture of relief and excitement flooding her. "But they're going to come after us even harder now." Jake nodded, his expression serious. "We have the information we need. Now we can prepare for what's coming." "Do you think they'll really sweep the forest?" Sarah asked, concern in her voice. "They will," Jake replied. "But we won't let them catch us. We'll be ready." Lyra felt a mix of fear and determination. They had taken a huge step in their mission, and she was grateful to have Jake and Sarah by her side. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. As they made their way back to the cabin, Lyra knew they were stronger together. The fight was not over, but they were ready for the battles to come. The hidden truth. As night fell, Lyra, Jake, and Sarah gathered in the old observatory, the air thick with tension. They had successfully returned from their secret mission, but the weight of their discovery hung heavily on their minds. Jake spread the map out on the dusty table, his brow furrowed in thought. "We learned a lot today," he said, pointing to the markings on the map. "But we still have questions. We need to know why they want Lyra so much." Lyra leaned closer, her heart racing. "What if they want to use me against my people? I can't let that happen." Sarah nodded, her expression serious. "We have to uncover the truth. There must be something hidden at the base. If we can find it, we might understand their plans." "I think we need to go back," Jake suggested. "We can search for information. If there's anything valuable, we can bring it back here." Lyra hesitated. "What if we get caught? It's dangerous." Jake placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I promise we'll be careful. We need to do this for your safety and for Zephyria." With their mission set, they made plans for the next day. They would return to the military base, but this time, they would look for answers. Lyra felt a mix of fear and excitement. They needed to find the hidden truth. The next morning, they set out early, moving quickly through the trees. The air was cool, and the forest was quiet. Lyra's heart raced as they approached the base again. She felt a knot in her stomach, but pushed her fear aside. Once they reached the gap in the fence, they slipped through quietly. The base was bustling with activity, but they had a plan. They needed to blend in and stay unnoticed. "Let's head to the main building," Jake whispered, pointing towards a large structure at the center of the base. "If there are any records or documents, they'll be there." As they moved carefully through the area, Lyra's eyes darted around, watching for any soldiers. They finally reached the entrance of the main building. Jake glanced at Sarah, who nodded, confirming that the coast was clear. Inside, the building was filled with rows of filing cabinets and computers. The hum of machines filled the air, creating a strange atmosphere. "We need to find a way to gather information quickly," Jake said. Lyra's heart raced as they began searching through the cabinets. Most of the files were labeled with military codes and jargon that made no sense to her. Suddenly, Sarah called out, "Here, I found something." She pulled out a folder marked Project Zephyr. Lyra rushed over, her heart pounding. "What does it say?" Sarah opened the folder, revealing pages filled with notes and diagrams. "It looks like they've been studying alien technology and looking for ways to control it." Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. Control it? But why? "There's a section here about using a princess to gain power," Sarah read aloud. "They believe if they capture you, they can unlock the secrets of your technology." "No," Lyra gasped, her voice shaking. "They can't use me like that." Jake's face darkened. "This is worse than we thought. We have to get this information back to your people." Just then, they heard footsteps approaching. Panic set in. "Quick, we need to hide," Jake whispered urgently. They quickly ducked behind a nearby desk, holding their breath as soldiers walked in. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest, the tension nearly unbearable. The soldiers began talking about the same Project Zephyr. "We need to find the princess before she can warn anyone," one soldier said. "She's the key to everything." Lyra's fear turned to anger. "They can't control me," she whispered, fists clenched. "I won't let them." As the soldiers moved closer, Jake motioned for them to stay silent. They'd waited in the shadows until the soldiers finally left the room. Once they were gone, Lyra felt a surge of determination. "We need to leave now and take this folder with us. This is our chance to stop them." With the folder safely tucked under her arm, they hurried out of the building and back through the gap in the fence. As they ran through the forest, Lyra knew they had uncovered a dangerous secret. The truth was finally revealed, and they were ready to fight against the soldiers' plans. With each step, Lyra felt stronger and more determined. She would not let anyone control her or her people. They would stop the soldiers and protect Sci-Fi at all costs. The betrayal. As they returned to the observatory, Lyra felt a mix of excitement and fear. They had uncovered crucial information about Project Zephyr, but the reality of the soldiers' intentions weighed heavily on her mind. She knew they had to act fast, but she also needed to share their findings with her people. "Let's go over the plan one more time," Jake said as they gathered around the table, the folder from the military base open in front of them. "We need to warn the leaders of Zephyria and prepare them for what's coming." Lyra nodded, but deep down, she felt a sense of unease. What if they don't believe us? What if they think I'm just a scared princess? "We will show them the proof," Sarah replied confidently, tapping the folder. "This information is too important to ignore." Just then, the door creaked open, and a figure stepped into the room. It was Sarah's brother, Mark, whom they hadn't seen in weeks. Lyra felt a wave of relief wash over her. "Mark, you're here," she exclaimed. "Lyra, Jake, I've been looking for you," Mark said, his eyes wide with worry. "I heard rumors about the soldiers searching for you. I wanted to help." "We're glad you're here," Jake said, relief evident in his voice. "We need to get this information back to Zephyria quickly." As they discussed their next steps, Lyra noticed that Mark seemed unusually quiet. He stood slightly apart from the group, glancing nervously at the door. Lyra felt a strange sense of doubt creeping in. "Are you okay, Mark?" she asked. "Yeah, I'm fine," he replied too quickly. I'm worried about you all." Lyra shrugged off her concerns, focusing on the plan. They decided to set off for Zephyria at first light. They needed to reach the capital before the soldiers could catch up with them. As night fell, they'd made camp near the observatory. They shared stories around the fire, laughter filling the air. Lyra felt safe with Jake, Sarah, and Mark by her side. She believed that together they could protect Zephyria. But as she drifted off to sleep, a nagging feeling tugged at her. She couldn't shake the unease she felt about Mark. She hoped it was just her imagination. The next morning, they woke early and prepared for their journey. As they packed their things, Lyra noticed Mark slipping away, quietly heading into the woods. "Where are you going?" she called after him. "Just checking the area," he replied, but his tone sounded off. Lyra exchanged worried glances with Jake and Sarah. "I'll follow him," she said, her instincts telling her something was wrong. She quietly followed Mark, keeping her distance. As she moved deeper into the trees, she heard him talking. Lyra strained to listen, her heart pounding. "I have the information," Mark was saying, his voice low. "I'll deliver it to the soldiers. They will pay me well for it." Lyra felt as if the ground had fallen out from under her. Betrayal. Mark was working with the soldiers. Her heart raced with anger and disbelief. How could he do this to them? She took a deep breath and stepped out from behind the tree. "Why, Mark? Why would you betray us?" she demanded, her voice trembling with emotion. Mark turned, his face a mix of surprise and guilt. "Lyra, You're working with them. You're going to hand us over." Lyra shouted, feeling hurt and betrayed. "It's not what you think," Mark pleaded. "I didn't have a choice. They have my family. I thought I could help you both, but I didn't want to put them in danger." Lyra felt her heart break. "You could have trusted us. We could have figured something out together." Just then, Jake and Sarah appeared, sensing the tension. "What's going on?" Jake asked, his voice firm. "Mark is betraying us," Lyra said, her voice shaking with emotion. "He's working with the soldiers." "No, I'm just trying to protect my family," Mark shouted, his eyes wide with fear. Sarah stepped forward. "You should have told us the truth, Mark. Now we can't trust you." With that, Lyra felt the weight of betrayal heavy on her heart. "You need to leave," she said, her voice firm. "We can't risk the soldiers finding us because of you." Mark looked hurt, but knew he had no choice. "I'm sorry, Lyra. I really am." As Mark turned to leave, Lyra felt tears in her eyes. She had lost a friend today. The path ahead was more dangerous than ever, but they had to keep moving. With newfound determination, Lyra, Jake, and Sarah prepared to face the challenges ahead, knowing that betrayal could come from unexpected places. The big battle. The sun rose over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Lyra, Jake, and Sarah stood on a hill overlooking the capital of Zephyria. They could see the military base in the distance, bustling with soldiers preparing for battle. The reality of their situation hit Lyra hard. This was the moment they had been preparing for, and it would determine the fate of their home. "Today, we fight for Zephyria," Jake said, his voice steady. "We must warn the people and gather everyone who will help us." Lyra nodded, feeling a mix of fear and determination. "We can't let them take control. We have to protect our home." Sarah checked her supplies, ensuring they had enough weapons and food for the day. "We need to rally the leaders and the people. They must know what's coming." As they made their way down the hill, Lyra felt her heart race. They passed through the streets, gathering small groups of people along the way. Each person listened with wide eyes as Lyra explained the soldiers' plans. "They want to capture me and use me to control our technology," Lyra said urgently. "But we will not let this happen. We must stand together." People began to gather, whispers spreading through the crowd. Some looked worried, while others appeared determined. Among them were warriors, farmers, and even children ready to help. Hours passed, and soon the crowd had grown large. Lyra stood at the front, her heart pounding with excitement and fear. "We are all here for one reason: to protect our home. The soldiers think they can take Zephyria without a fight, but they are wrong. We will fight for our freedom." The crowd cheered, their voices rising in unison. "For Zephyria." Just then, a loud horn echoed through the air. The soldiers were marching toward them, their numbers vast. Lyra's heart sank, but she quickly steadied herself. "Get ready. We must protect our land." The warriors moved to the front, weapons raised, while the others prepared to defend their homes. Lyra felt Jake's hand on her shoulder, providing comfort. "Stay strong, Lyra. We can do this together." The soldiers approached, and a hush fell over the crowd. The leader of the soldiers, a tall man with a stern face, stepped forward. "You cannot win, princess," he shouted. "Surrender now, and I promise you a place by my side." Lyra stepped forward, anger bubbling inside her. "I will never join you. You think you can control us, but you are wrong. We will fight." With that, the battle began. The warriors charged forward, clashing with the soldiers. Lyra watched in awe as her people fought bravely. Jake was beside her, protecting her from the chaos around them. "Stay close," he shouted over the noise of clanging swords and shouts. "We need to find a way to the command tent." Lyra nodded, determination fueling her. They moved through the battle, dodging blows and helping those in need. The air was thick with dust, and the sounds of war filled their ears. As they reached the command tent, they found a group of soldiers gathered around a table, looking at maps. Lyra recognized one of them as the soldier who had spoken about capturing her. "Now is our chance," Jake said, motioning for them to attack. They burst into the tent, catching the soldiers off guard. "Get back," the soldier shouted, but it was too late. Lyra, Jake, and Sarah fought fiercely, determined to protect their home. The battle raged on outside, and Lyra could hear the cries of her people. They were holding their ground, but the soldiers were strong. She knew they had to act fast. "Let's destroy their plans," Lyra shouted, grabbing a torch from a nearby table. She set fire to the maps and documents, watching as they burned. "This will disrupt their strategy." The soldiers panicked, scrambling to save their plans. In the chaos, Lyra felt a surge of hope. They were making a difference. With the command tent in disarray, Lyra, Jake, and Sarah rejoined the battle outside. The sight of their people fighting with renewed spirit filled Lyra with strength. She raised her voice, calling out to her people, "Fight for our freedom. We will not back down." The warriors rallied around her, and together they pushed back against the soldiers. Lyra could see the tide of the battle turning. They were fighting for their home, and nothing could stop them. As the sun began to set, casting a golden light over the battlefield, Lyra felt a sense of victory rising within her. They would win this battle, and Zephyria would be free. A new beginning. As the sun set on the battlefield, the last echoes of war faded away. The sounds of clashing swords and cries of battle were replaced by a profound silence. Lyra stood among her people, her heart swelling with pride and relief. They had fought bravely and driven the soldiers away. Zephyria was safe. The air was thick with smoke, and remnants of the battle lay scattered around them. Some warriors were tending to the wounded, while others celebrated their victory. Lyra's eyes searched for Jake and Sarah. She needed to find her friends in this moment of chaos. "Lyra," Jake called, running toward her with a wide grin. "We did it. We actually did it." He swept her into a hug, and she could feel the warmth of his excitement. "We couldn't have done it without everyone," Lyra replied, glancing around at the faces of her people. They were tired but happy, their spirits lifted by the victory. Sarah joined them, her eyes bright with joy. "I can't believe we fought back. We stood up to them, and we won." As they celebrated, Lyra felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. They had faced so many challenges together, and now they were stronger for it. But even amid the joy, Lyra felt a twinge of sadness for the lives lost during the battle. She remembered the sacrifices made by her people. "Let's honor those who fought for us," Lyra suggested, her voice serious. "We should hold a ceremony to remember them." Jake and Sarah nodded in agreement. "It's important to remember our heroes," Jake said, his expression turning somber. That evening, they gathered in the town square, lighting candles to honor the fallen. Lyra stood in front of the crowd, her heart heavy yet determined. "Today, we celebrate our victory, but we must also remember those who gave their lives for our freedom. Their bravery will never be forgotten." The people bowed their heads in silence, the flickering candles illuminating their faces. Lyra felt a strong sense of unity among them. They had fought together, and now they would heal together. After the ceremony, Lyra found herself in deep thought. With the soldiers gone, it was time to rebuild. She needed to ensure that Zephyria would remain safe from future threats. "We need to strengthen our defenses," she said to Jake and Sarah as they walked through the town. "And we should create a council to help lead our people." "That's a great idea," Sarah replied. "We can involve more voices in our decisions. Everyone should have a say in what happens next." Jake nodded. "And we can train the next generation to defend our home. We cannot let our guard down again." With their plan in place, Lyra felt a renewed sense of purpose. The next day, she called a meeting in the town square, inviting everyone to come together. People gathered, their faces curious and hopeful. "Today, we start a new chapter for Zephyria," Lyra announced, her voice strong. "We will build a council that represents our people. We will work together to ensure our safety and prosperity." Cheers erupted from the crowd. They were ready for a fresh start, ready to take control of their destiny. As the days turned into weeks, Lyra, Jake, and Sarah worked tirelessly to establish the council. They invited leaders from different regions of Zephyria to join, ensuring that all voices were heard. Together, they discussed plans for defense, trade, and education. Lyra also focused on healing. She organized events to bring the community together, celebrating their victory and remembering those they had lost. The people began to feel a sense of hope again, and the spirit of Zephyria grew stronger. One evening, as Lyra sat on a hill overlooking the town, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the landscape. She had worked hard to bring her people together, and they were thriving. "Look how far we've come," Jake said, joining her. "We turned a dark time into something beautiful." Lyra smiled, feeling grateful for her friends. "We did this together. I couldn't have done it without you." As they watched the sun dip below the horizon, Lyra knew this was just the beginning. Zephyria was strong, and together they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. With hope in their hearts, they were ready to embrace the future.